What if Mamoru Endo found Jesus? When the faith that sustains all meets the hope that sustains even those who lead. Mamoru Endo always believed that believing was acting. From an early age, he learned that hope was not something to be awaited in silence, but something to be defended with one's whole body. Defending the goal was more than just preventing the ball from passing. It was holding the team's spirit when the legs trembled. It was smiling when the score threatened to crush. It was shouting, "We can do it," even when the wind seemed to blow against. He grew up this way, with the conviction that if he believed enough, everyone would believe. And if everyone believed, victory would come. But faith sustained only by the strength of will comes at a silent price. Mamoru rarely spoke about it, not because he wanted to hide anything, but because he saw no use in talking. The leader does not complain. The captain does not waver. The goalkeeper does not fall before the final whistle. He stood tall because everyone looked to him when fear arrived. And when everyone looks at you, learning to smile becomes an obligation. There were nights, however, when the smile was not enough. Nights when he remembered the defeats that nearly broke the team, the looks that asked for more than he had to give, the impossible saves that became routine. In those moments, Mamoru felt something strange. It was not doubt about winning, but fatigue from holding on. A fatigue that could not be resolved with extra training or words of encouragement. He was walking alone through the empty field when it happened. The stands were silent. The damp grass reflected the weak light from the posts, and the wind carried the scent of distant rain. It was the kind of silence that doesn't threaten, but reveals. Mamoru stopped in the center of the field, took a deep breath, and closed his eyes for a moment. Not to give up, to endure a little longer. If I fall, he thought, who holds the team? It was then that he sensed a presence. Not the sound of footsteps, not a hurried shadow. Just someone there, at the edge of the field, watching with calm attention. Mamoru opened his eyes and saw a man in simple robes, a serene expression, as if the weight of the world was not hanging on his shoulders, and yet, as if he knew exactly that weight. "Sorry, the field is closed," Mamoru said, out of polite reflex. The man smiled slightly. "I know." The response didn't sound challenging. It sounded complete. Mamoru furrowed his brow. "So, what are you doing here? Observing someone who learned to carry more than they should." The phrase hit him with disconcerting delicacy. "I do this because I have to," Mamoru replied. "If I don't believe, who will?" The man took a few steps across the lawn, unhurried. Believing is not the same as holding everything alone. Mamoru felt his heart race. That sounded like the talk of someone who doesn't understand competition, pressure, expectation. But someone needs to hold on when everything threatens to fall. The man looked at him with calm firmness. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 28. The word burdened found its exact place. Mamoru had never described himself that way. He called it responsibility. He called it leadership. He called it love for the team. But, upon hearing those words, something opened up, not as weakness, as recognition. "If I rest," said Mamoru, "someone loses." The man replied firmly yet gently, "Rest also guards." Mamoru blinked, trying to understand. "Guards? How?" "Like one who trusts," the man answered. "Like one who knows he is not the source of hope, but the channel." Channel. Mamoru had always seen himself as a wall, the last line, the period. The idea of being a channel implied something greater flowing through him, and that relieved him of the obligation to be infinite. "You speak of faith," Mamoru said, "but faith needs to be shown." The man nodded. "Faith without works is dead." Letter of James, chapter 2, verse 17. Mamoru felt a brief relief. He knew this language, but the man continued. "And works without rest make the heart hard." The combination disarmed him. He had always known how to work, insist, believe. He had never learned to rest in someone. Resting for someone, yes, resting in no. "Who are you?" Mamoru asked, with genuine respect. The man answered clearly that he was not seeking impact, only truth. "I am the Good Shepherd." Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 11. Shepherd. Mamoru thought of leadership, care, protection. But he also thought of something new. The shepherd protects the flock, but the flock does not sustain the shepherd. The direction came from above, not from the collective weight. "Then I don't need to be the strongest all the time?" he asked, almost in a whisper. The man replied, "My strength is made perfect in weakness." Second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 12, verse 9. Mamoru felt a lump in his throat. He had never allowed anyone to see his weakness, not out of shame, but out of zeal. Now, someone was telling him that weakness did not nullify leadership. It deepened it. The wind passed through the field. The lights flickered slightly. Mamoru looked at the empty goal and realized something simple and profound. He had always defended with his body. Perhaps now he was called to trust with his heart. The man took a step back, as if not to pressure decisions. "Follow me." Mamoru did not respond immediately. He needed to learn something new, not to hold everything, not to always smile, not to win at any cost, to trust. And there, in that silent field, the faith that had always supported others began to find the hope that would also support him. Mamoru remained silent for a few moments, as if he were facing a different goal, not a goal of net and posts, but an inner goal, made of ancient fear and accumulated responsibility. "Follow me" did not sound like an invitation to abandon who he was. It sounded like an invitation to finally be who he never had time to be. A son who can also be cared for, a leader who can also breathe, a heart that does not need to prove its worth every minute. "If I follow you," he finally said, choosing his words carefully, "what changes? I will still have games. I will still have pressure. I will still have people counting on me." The man answered with serene firmness, "In the world, you will have tribulations." Gospel of John, chapter 16, verse 33. Mamoru felt the honesty of the phrase. There was no promise of an easy life. Faith was not an escape from difficulty. It was another way to go through it. And then the voice continued, as if delivering what truly sustained the heart. "But take heart. I have overcome the world." Mamoru took a deep breath. Overcome the world. He had always interpreted victory as a score, as a trophy, as proof of excellence. But there, overcome seemed to mean something deeper. To win without losing oneself. To win without allowing the pressure to swallow the soul. To win without turning the heart into a machine. "I always thought that faith was not trembling," Mamoru confessed. "That I needed to be strong all the time. If I show fear, they fall." The man looked at him with a compassion that did not diminish his leadership. "Do not be afraid." Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verse 32. Those words did not come as a reprimand, but as a refuge. Mamoru realized something disconcerting. He had learned to encourage others, but he did not know how to receive encouragement. He knew how to say, "You can do it," but he did not know how to hear, "I am with you." "I don't know how to rest," he admitted. "When I stop, I feel guilty." The man responded precisely, as if touching the root. "Come to me, and I will give you rest." Gospel of Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. To relieve was not to nullify responsibility. It was to place it back in the right place. Mamoru understood that his fatigue was not just physical. It was the fatigue of someone trying to be a source, someone trying to be unshakable, someone trying to be enough. "But I have to set an example," he insisted sincerely. The man replied, "The greatest among you will be your servant." Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 11. Mamoru nodded inwardly. He knew how to serve. He always had. But there was something hidden in the way he served. He served as if that were his only identity. He served as if he were not allowed to be served. And that emptied him. "Am I serving wrong?" he asked, almost startled. The man replied with gentle firmness, "You are serving out of fear." The phrase hit him like a mirror. Mamoru had always been afraid, not of the game, but of failing others. Afraid of being the reason for the collapse. Afraid of disappointing. Afraid of seeing the team's eyes lose their shine. "I just want them not to suffer," he said. The man replied, "I did not come to take the path away, but to walk with you." And, as if to seal the promise with a written word, he added, "And behold, I am with you all the days, even unto the end of the world." Gospel of Matthew, chapter 28, verse 20. Mamoru felt something dissolve inside him. It wasn't the desire to win. It wasn't the will to protect. It was the loneliness of the leader. The idea that he was the only guardian of the team's spirit. The promise, every day, shattered the illusion that he needed to be permanent. There was a greater care sustaining his care. He looked around the field. The empty bleachers seemed to remind him that applause and criticism are fleeting, but the heart remains. And an exhausted heart cannot stay whole. "And what if I lose?" he suddenly asked, as if an ancient truth had risen to his throat. "Because I have already lost. I will lose again. What happens to faith when the score doesn't favor?" The man answered with simple, cutting words, like an arrow. "What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul?" Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, verse 36. Mamoru stood still. That was it. The risk was not just losing the game. The risk was winning and still losing. Becoming someone who only exists when there is victory. Someone who only has value when they are useful. Someone who lives as an instrument and dies inside in silence. "I never thought of it that way," he whispered. The man replied, "Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you." Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 33. Mamoru felt the shift in axis. Kingdom first, identity first, purpose first, the rest added. Not disregarded, not denied, but repositioned. Victory would no longer be the altar where he sacrificed his own peace. Victory would be the consequence of an aligned heart, and not a substitute for meaning. "But I like to win," Mamoru said, almost apologizing for feeling that way. The man smiled slightly, as if he understood joy without idolatry. "There is a time to laugh." Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 4. And then, as if putting order to joy, he completed with a truth that does not humiliate. "Without me, you can do nothing." Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 5. Mamoru swallowed hard. That did not diminish the effort. It diminished the pride. It did not call him weak. It called him dependent, in the healthiest sense of the word. A branch is not useless for depending on the vine. It is alive for depending. He felt the urge to respond with some strong phrase, some promise that he would be better, more disciplined, more impeccable. It was his old reflex, to turn meeting into task. But something in him realized that this would be repeating the pattern. The man seemed to read what he did not say. "Do not be anxious." Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 34. Mamoru let out a breath he didn't even know he was holding. "So what do I do now?" he asked. The man replied without complicating, "Remain." The word fell as instruction and shelter. To remain was not to run. It was not to prove. It was to stay connected. It was to let hope not be a performance, but a source. Mamoru looked at his hands. The same hands that held the ball, that defended, that pointed direction for the team. And he realized that his hands could also be hands that open, that receive, that rest. He stood there, in silence, and for the first time understood that faith is not the absence of trembling. Faith is trusting, even while trembling. Faith is walking even without feeling absolute control. Faith is ceasing to be the savior of one's own world. And, in that empty field, something began to be born within him. Not a new technique, but a new center. Mamoru remained there for a long time after silence returned to occupy the field. There were no more audible words, no footsteps, no visible sign of that man. Still, something had remained. Not as a vague memory, but as an inner presence. It was not euphoria. It was alignment. Like when the team finally understands the tactical scheme and everything starts to flow without shouting. He got up slowly. The body was still the same. The field was the same. The challenges that awaited him were also the same. But the weight was no longer all on him. For the first time, Mamoru realized something he had never admitted even to himself. He confused responsibility with loneliness. He thought that leading meant absorbing everything, that being a captain meant not being allowed to fall, that faith meant not showing weakness. But now he understood that this was not faith. It was fear disguised as courage. As he walked to the center of the field, he remembered every time he shouted, "Believe," when, inside, he was tired of believing alone. He recalled the sleepless nights, the silent fear of not being enough, of losing not just games, but the trust of those who depended on him. And then he understood. He didn't need to be the ultimate foundation. He needed to be part of the construction. The words echoed again within him, not as a command, but as a living truth. Stay. Staying meant playing with excellence without turning the outcome into identity. Staying meant leading without nullifying oneself. Staying meant trusting that there was a greater care sustaining all that he could not control. In the next training session, something subtle changed. It wasn't visible on the scoreboard. It wasn't a headline. But those who looked closely would notice. Mamoru was still shouting instructions, still throwing himself at the ball, still believing until the last second. But there was less tension in his shoulders, less despair in his gaze, less urgency to prove something. When a teammate made a mistake, he didn't carry the blame alone. When the defense failed, he didn't retreat into silence. When he won, he didn't feel the emptiness that used to come right after. Something had been healed in the place where hope once hurt. He understood that Jesus didn't come to take away his calling or diminish his passion. He came to purify it. He came to free it from the slavery of performance. He came to restore joy without anxiety, discipline without oppression, leadership without self-annihilation. Mamoru Endo never stopped being a goalkeeper. He never stopped being a captain. He never stopped fighting until the end. But he stopped believing that the world depended solely on him. And it is here that the story stops being about Mamoru. Maybe you are also someone who supports others. Someone who encourages, leads, protects, and inspires. Perhaps everyone sees you as strong, but few notice the exhaustion you hide. Maybe you think that resting is failing, that asking for help is weakness, that faith is not feeling fear. But Jesus does not call only those who have visibly fallen. He also calls those who are standing, exhausted inside. He did not come only for those who have lost everything. He also came for those who have never stopped, never fallen, never given up, and for that reason have never rested. The question is not whether you are strong enough. The question is whether you are willing to stop carrying it all alone. Cast all your anxiety on me, because I care for you. First letter of Peter, chapter 5, verse 7. This promise is not poetry. It is an invitation. Not to abandon your mission, but to live it with a whole heart. If this story touched something in you, don't ignore it. Maybe it's not a coincidence. Maybe it's a calling. Choose to stay. Choose to trust. Choose to rest in God while continuing to move forward. And if you want to declare this today, write in the comments, "I remain." Subscribe to the channel for more stories that not only inspire, but restore. Share with someone who leads in silence and needs to remember they are not alone. Because true strength is born when the ego rests and faith remains.